The fundamental shift I'm trying to communicate is we think of securing like things as we always think about one machine. How is like authorization happening? Okay, the user signs into this website and does this. We're always having this idea of one laptop and one server because that's how we're taught, right? It's generally not the case at scale, right? The scale is different where you can actually have a front end that actually redirects load balances the traffic first, right, which then redirects to an authorization service maybe, which then talks to some other database at the back end, right, which authorizes, which has a key signing thing. You see how quickly it becomes complicated? The major like key idea with securing things at scale, not just at Google, but like in general, is having good engineering that lets you accomplish like things that are not otherwise possible through one system, right? You'll face bottlenecks really, really quickly. So that is, I think, a very, very key and foundational thing I've seen across the. So you'll not believe this, right? Whenever like I work, different at these different places, wherever I spend a lot of time understanding their tools and technologies. First few months, I'm like learning. Literally, like, so how do you do this, right? What is your system for like storing like passwords, right? So how do you rotate them? Like, what methodologies exist? How do you prevent like DOS? Or everyone has their own tech, right? And if you look at and if you kind of make a gist out of it, how they have solved that problem is really like splitting components, distributing the problem across the board, and then combining the results together, thereby solving it at scale. They just call it different names, right? They have different interconnections. So once you understand this, right, and that's why I didn't go into security right away. That's why I said it is important to first understand tech and how tech is done there. Then you add the security layer on top. So then you say, oh, now I know the flow of user requests. What happens at each layer? And then you start threat modeling. So some of the things that I've learned, I would say, is your basic ideas of how do you do threat modeling correctly doesn't change at scale. It doesn't. It's the same concept. That one has zero change, I would say. Almost zero change. Right? There are some aspects that change, obviously, where are you grading this correctly? What sort of, how do you like assess this risk and stuff? When you actually write it on a diagram or a drawing board or whatever, right? That doesn't change. I want to get to the part that doesn't eventually. And that is the fundamental difference. So you go from learning the tech, you go from your concepts to learning how they solve problems, how they build their tech infrastructure and stuff like that. And I talk about any company here, by the way. And then you layer the security thing on top. And then you zoom in to the point where you can say, oh, now this is my textbook problem, or like this is a problem I can write it on paper and solve it without the variations of scale. And then you scale out. Does this make sense? But it's a little bit complicated, but I'm trying to describe how I think about security at scale, right? Not just how Google does it, by the way. This has nothing to do with it, but how you can think about at scale. And this fundamental building blocks don't change. So you have to get to those blocks that don't change from the blocks that have changed. And this is pretty abstract, but if you think deeply, this is true from what I've seen.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Whenever I go into a new environment, like you said, right? And now I'm more on the professional services side. So when I go into an environment and I'm talking to, the people that built the systems and whatnot, I'm asking them, hey, why did you do it like this? Right. I'll give you an example. I was working for, a really big company, and my purpose was to not only learn this other individual's role because he was retiring at the end of the year,
Yeah.
but also to identify areas of improvement, and things that we could be doing better internally, that he may have owned. Right. And so he designed this entire, I cannot remember the name of it. Microsoft coined the term or whatever, and this company paid Microsoft a lot of money to come in and build it all out for him and everything. But it was, just basically like a true zero trust environment, completely sequestered, only a handful of IPs allowed in and out, and everything else like that, right? Like it's like the most highly secure environment that you could find outside of the government, which made no sense because they didn't have like top secret information or anything. And so it was a very old way of doing things. It worked, it worked kind of barely, but it
Yeah.
worked, right? And so, the first thing I did when I came in was I didn't tell them, hey, we're going to tear this whole thing down in 12 months, and build something better. The first thing that I asked them was, hey, what was the mentality behind all of this? Why did you do it? What happened to make
Yep.
you want to do it like this? Right?
Yep.
Why did you put everything behind 3 firewalls and, have like these special laptops with these special certificates on them to get in, and
Exactly.
all this sort of stuff. Like, why did you go down that route, right? And he talked to me about the breach that the company actually had that led to it, where the hackers were able to just get through the environment unvetted, unfiltered. No one really knew how to stop them or anything like that. So it reinforced the decision that they made to actually build it like that, because they're like, well, we're going to put all of our crown jewels into this environment. There's only going to be 5 physical laptops in the entire company that can get into this environment, that have the certificates on it. And then it's a special account and special MFA and all this sort of stuff. Right. So I understood it a whole lot better. Right. And then from there, I was able to actually like truly solve problems without ruffling feathers and whatnot, because it's like, hey, this is great. This is a fantastic architecture. You did a great job, man. This is what I'm thinking for like phase one of a new iteration, right? Like coining it as that. So I'm not offending this guy as he retires, taking away or rebuilding his baby, so to speak, right? That's an
Exactly.
important factor whenever you go to a company, is to just learn as much as you possibly can, and go into it with an open mind. Even now in my professional services, right? Like whenever I see something, and this literally happened 2 weeks ago, I'll be on the phone with a client, and they'll be going through their environment. And I'll say, "Oh, why don't you check this menu over here?" Right? Specifically, it was in GCP. They're like, "Hey, let me see this network segment or whatever it might be." And immediately I'm seeing, "Oh, this is open to the world. Hey, do you guys? Is there a reason why it's open to the world? Because like from my point of view, if I'm seeing this without seeing it through your eyes, this is going to be a critical on my report that I create." Right. Like this is top of the line of what you need to resolve. There's no point to it. It's open to the public. It doesn't need to be, all this sort of stuff. Right. And then they gave me the background. Okay. From that background, let's build in a solution. I understand why you did it. It's not going to go on the report that same way. Let's resolve it right now. That's a much easier and different conversation to have at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I skipped one of your earlier questions about like how did you start about the helping the community parts, but I'll probably get to it at some point. But you're spot on with the background part, which is why like I would say this doesn't even apply to companies, even it can apply to your personal projects. So the way you operate is with curiosity. And again, I'm tying this back to question number one you asked me. So because I was curious about, can this person really do this? Like they are trying to like say, oh, I can take over your profile. Like, how is that possible? If so, like how long can they have access? What can they do with it? Right? It's that same idea applied to a role, a job, or a project.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'll talk about my journey a little bit with trying to give back to the community a bit,
Yeah.
right? Because it's an interesting thing, to have it in your head like, oh, I can give back, I can provide value and that sort of thing. Before going into it, I always felt I don't know enough to give back, right? Like I don't know enough. I'm not knowledgeable enough. I don't have a name. I don't have a brand, all these things. There's a million doubts that go through your head going into it. The one thing that kept me going down the path was the constant questions that I would get on LinkedIn, right? Is, hey, how do you get into cybersecurity? Is this certification worth it? Do I need this? Do I need to go get this degree? All this sort of stuff. How did you make it happen for you? And that's when I started to realize, like, okay, you know what, like maybe there's value